Hi, I'm Dean, 34, and last month I thought I finally did something right. I gifted my parents a $300,000 lakefront cabin for their retirement and deeded in their name, stocked with all their favorite comforts, and even included a small welcome note in the drawer that just said, "You deserve peace. Enjoy every moment. Love, Dean." For once, I felt like I wasn't the son who disappointed, the one who stayed quiet while my younger brother Ben got the spotlight. For once, I thought I'd finally made them proud. They called me from the porch that first evening, Mom crying, Dad saying it was too much. But he sounded happy. And for that night, so was I a week later. I drove back up to surprise them with dinner. That's when everything cracked. I pulled into the gravel drive around 5:20 p.m. The sun was sinking over the lake, casting this golden wash over the pines, and I remember thinking, this is what I wanted them to have. No debt, no stress, just silence and sunrises. But as I got closer, I saw something strange. There was a new car in the driveway. Not mine, not theirs. A black Escalade, shiny enough to reflect the sky. I figured maybe they had visitors. Old friends, a cousin. I didn't think much of it, not at first. I walked up the front steps with a bag of groceries in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. As I reached for the door, I heard voices. My father's hum but muted. Then another voice, louder, casual. Well, yeah, I told the neighbors we bought the place last month. That's why they think it's ours. But the place? I froze. The screen door creaked, and I stepped inside slowly. Dad was at the kitchen table, fidgeting with a set of coasters I'd bought. His shoulders were stiff, like someone who'd just been caught lying mid-sentence. And across from him, standing like he owned the floor, was Ben. My brother, wearing boat shoes and that smug, toothy smile he always wore when he was lying through it. Ben barked. Too loud, too forced. Didn't know you were coming up. Yeah, I said slowly. Didn't know you lived here now. Double quote silence. Mom walked in from the hallway holding a tray of appetizers like she was auditioning for some lakeside reality show. Her eyes flicked between us. "Sweetheart," she said to Sweet. "You should have called." I looked at Dad. He didn't meet my eyes. I set the groceries down, very carefully, and said, "Why did Ben just tell someone he bought this cabin?" Ben jumped in like I was the one being unreasonable. "It's not like that," he said. "I mean, it's in the family. We just simplified the story for the neighbors. Ben's been helping us settle in." Mom added quickly, "He's been so helpful. Helpful." Ben hadn't helped him pack groceries since 2006. I stepped outside, suddenly needing air. But as I passed the open window, I heard my father's voice, low and guilty. "He doesn't need to know it was a gift. Let people think Ben bought it. It's just easier that way." That's when it hit me. They weren't proud of the gift. They were ashamed of who it came from. They were erasing me from my own generosity. I didn't say anything. I didn't confront them in that moment. I got in my car and drove down the hill until the trees blurred, and the shame hit like a punch to the gut. I pulled over on a gravel shoulder, stared out at the water, and realized something I hadn't let myself believe in years. Some wounds don't come from strangers. They come from the people you most wanted to impress. And when they tell the story later, the story of how they retired by the lake, of how their golden child got them the perfect cabin, I'll be the footnote they never mentioned. The one who tried too hard, who gave too much, and still wasn't enough. Asterisk, I didn't go home. Not right away. I sat in that car for an hour, maybe more, watching the lake flatten under the dusk like it was swallowing secrets. And all I kept thinking was, why him? Why Ben? Ben, who once called retirement homes just tax write-offs for old people. Ben, who spent the last decade floating between sales jobs, failed app startups, and to quick marriages that ended faster than my student loans. Ben, who once borrowed my identity to open a line of credit and said it was just a misunderstanding. And now, Ben, who apparently bought the cabin I spent 3 years saving for. Let me rewind. After our mom's health scare 2 years ago, a small heart attack, mild, but enough to shake her, I made a decision. No more someday gifts. No more promises for later. I worked overtime, skipped vacations, picked up freelance projects in the dead hours between my real jobs. I cooked the dream, every detail, found the cabin, negotiated it down, paid it off, gave it to them, and they handed the narrative to my brother like it was a spare set of keys. I drove back just before midnight. The cabin was dark except for the kitchen light. I let myself in. Dad was at the table, the kind of still that only comes after dinner. He looked up at me like I was a problem that had come home too soon. Dean, he said, you could have called. You could have told the truth. I said. He didn't argue. I sat down. You told the neighbors Ben bought the cabin. I didn't tell them. He said carefully. They assumed. And you let them. He rubbed his temples. It's not about credit, Dean. It's just easier this way. You know how Ben is. Yeah, I know. Ben needed to win, even when he didn't play the game. Do you think I bought this place for Ben? I asked. Do you think I worked 3 years, passed on raises to avoid triggering stock dilution, maxed out my savings accounts and paid cash just so you could pretend the golden boy finally came through? Dad flinched at that. We didn't mean for it to get complicated. Complicated. I laughed. It sounded sharp. Ugly. You erased me from my own gift. He looked tired, like a man who had spent his whole life choosing the easier child. Then he said it. The thing that broke it open. Your brothers made mistakes, Dean. You haven't. You don't need this. I stared at him. That was the logic. Ben needed the credit. I didn't. Ben needed the praise. I should be fine without it. I stood up, grabbed the keys to the storage room, pulled out the paperwork folder I'd stashed when I closed on the cabin, every receipt, deed copy, final wire transfer, my name on every line. I laid it on the table. You can tell whoever you want that Ben helped. But if you ever suggest again that I don't need acknowledgement, that being dependable makes me less worthy, you'll lose more than credit. Is that a threat? It's a boundary. He didn't respond. Mom called the next morning. Tried to explain. Said it was just a social slip. Said the neighbors were old-fashioned and wouldn't understand the story if I had been the one to buy it. Right. Because nothing says easier to explain like lying. I told her I wasn't mad. I was just done. I packed before lunch. Left the folder on the counter. Didn't slam the door, but I took the batteries out of the thermostat. Petty. Probably. Therapeutic. Definitely. I didn't speak to them for 3 weeks. No calls. No texts. No social media. I let their silence hang like laundry, exposed and damp, flapping in their own shame. Then came the mail. Subject line, important question about the cabin. I almost deleted it. But something in me itched, that old reflex. The one that always snapped to attention when they needed me. So I opened it. It wasn't from Dad or Mom. It was from Ben. Just 5 lines. Hey man, heard you're still upset. Look, this whole thing got blown out of proportion. Mom and Dad are old school. They meant well. But listen, I need to ask, can you transfer the property into my name officially? HOA stuff would just simplify things. I stared at the screen so long it went to sleep. Then I will read the last sentence. Can you transfer the property to my name officially? Like it was a box of winter coats. Like I was the mailman. Like I hadn't poured my soul into that cabin while Ben spent his adult life Googling passive income and lying on dating apps about being a tech founder. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to the title office the next morning. Hi, I said to the clerk. I need to update the mailing address on a deed, and I'd like to register a security lien. She raised an eyebrow. Against yourself? Against any transfer requests? I said, it's mine. But some people seemed confused. While I was at it, I added a note in the county record flagging the property as not for sale and not under co-ownership. I paid the administrative fees, had everything notarized, took copies home and mailed one to myself. Old trick I learned in law school, and open self-mail is time-stamped evidence if things get messy. 2 days later, Ben texted again. Did you see my email? HOA deadline is Friday. I didn't respond. Instead, I emailed the whole directly, attached the deed, and said, all communication regarding this property goes through me. There is no co-owner. Do not accept third-party input. They replied with a single sentence, understood. Thank you, Mr. Walker. That night, I went to bed with a calm I hadn't felt in years. But of course, peace doesn't last long in families that feed off chaos. Because the next morning,
Для другого
Mom called
значення.
out 3 times. Then Dad. Then wait for it, Ben's fiancé. I didn't even know he had a fiancé, a cutie. Her voicemail was something between a sales pitch and a hostage video. I did. I'm sure there's been some confusion, but Ben told me this was all going to be sorted by the wedding. We're planning to honeymoon at the cabin, you know, that special family place. And we'd love to host a rehearsal dinner there. He said you were just handling some last-minute paperwork. Anyway, I'll send over the RSVP form once we have the guest list finalized. Thanks so much for everything you do for this family. I nearly choked on my coffee. They weren't just stealing credit anymore. They were planning to build a future on top of my silence. So I did what I should have done a long time ago. I wrote a letter. Not an email, not a text. A real, printed letter. 3 copies. One for each of them. Mom, Dad, Ben. It was short, precise, surgical. I gifted you peace. You turned it into a prop. You took the story and rewrote the author out of it. So here's my new story. The cabin remains mine. There will be no transfer. There will be no wedding, no dinner, no lies built on lakefront lies. Enjoy the view from a distance. Then I signed it, folded it. And added one extra line. In handwriting, P.S. The thermostat batteries are still gone. I send it by certified mail. 3 signatures. No returns. The certified letters worked. 3 days after delivery, I got a call from Dad. I let it go to voicemail. His message started "15. It's your father. I think we should talk." And then softened into the kind of voice he used after grounding me for something Ben actually did. "You've made your point," he said. "We just didn't want to make things harder for your brother. You've always been more capable. I thought you'd understand." I did understand. I just didn't accept it anymore. That night, I sat in my apartment with a microwave meal and reread the text from Ben's fiancé about the family place and the rehearsal. Dinner they assumed they'd be hosting. They'd written me out of the story and still expected me to clean up the ending. So I rewrote the story. I called a property management firm. "Hi," I said. "I'd like to list a fully furnished cabin for short-term vacation rental. Lakefront, recently updated. No pets, no parties, and no wedding bookings allowed." I got an agent named Talia. She sounded sharp, efficient, the kind of person who didn't take nonsense from grown men in boat shoes. Within 48 hours, she had the place photographed, listed, and booked out for 3 months straight. I forwarded the link to my family group chat. No message. Just the listing. Ben replied in 6 minutes. "You're joking. Dean, the wedding. You know we were counting on this. This is actual sabotage." I replied with a single line. "You don't throw a rehearsal dinner in someone else's house." Mom called an hour later. This time she didn't bother with pleasantries. "Dean," she said, "do you really think this is necessary? I think it's overdue. You're punishing you. Brother, I'm protecting my boundaries. But we're family. You should have thought of that before erasing me from the picture." She started to say something else, but I was done performing. I told her I was busy, wished her well, and hung up. Then I did something radical. I booked a weekend at the cabin for myself. When I arrived, I found 3 things on the front porch: a forgotten box of Ben's signature cocktail mason jars, a monogram guest book with 2 pages filled, all signed by Ben's name, a handwritten schedule taped to the door titled "Wedding Weekend Flow," with bullet points like sunset photos, Ben's toast, and family canoe shot. I took it all down, tossed it in a bin behind the shed. Then I lit a fire, poured myself a bourbon, and sat on the deck watching the lake ripple under a sky that didn't care whose name was on the deed. And as the sun dipped below the trees, I felt something I hadn't felt since the day I handed them the keys. Peace. But it didn't last long, because just as I was about to head inside, a car pulled up. Black, big, loud. Ben. He didn't knock. He stormed up the stairs, red-faced and sweating through his broom squad t-shirt. "What the hell, Dean?" he snapped. "You hijacked my weekend." "No," I said calmly. "I reclaimed my property." He scoffed. "You're acting like some villain in a courtroom drama." I smiled, then stopped breaking into the set. He tried to appeal to reason, then emotion, then guilt. This was supposed to be a moment for the whole family. "You mean the moment you pretended I didn't exist?" "That's not what happened. You told the neighbors you bought the cabin. That's just PR. I laughed. Ben, you can't PR your way out of ownership. Not anymore. He stared at me, jaw clenched, like a man realizing the poker game was real and he'd been bluffing with a napkin and a loose penny. Finally, he said the thing I've been waiting for. You're just doing this to make me look bad. No, I said. You did that all by yourself. He left. Didn't slam the door, but only because I locked it before he could dot. And when the weekend ended, I left the thermostat off. The battery's still hidden. Just a little reminder that not everything lost can be borrowed back. 2 weeks later, the wedding happened, but not at the cabin. They ended up renting a venue and are outside the city. Some dusty barn turned event space with fairy lights and hay bales disguised as charm. Ben's fiancée posted a filtered Instagram story of them toasting next to a wheelbarrow of Prosecco bottles. The caption read, "Not the plan, but still perfect, #grateful, #married life. I didn't go. I wasn't invited, but I got tagged anyway by a mutual cousin, accidentally, and a group photo where Ben stood front and center, smiling like a man who still thought the truth was a matter of lighting. Later that night, I got a text from Mom. Just 5 words, "We missed you this weekend." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed, "Did you miss me?" Or the version of me that never says no. She didn't reply. The next morning, I met with my financial advisor. We rerouted the vacation rental earnings into a separate LLC, one that no one else could touch. I named it Sunset Margin Holdings. A little private joke. The week after that, the whole president or retired schoolteacher named Lula sent me a thank you card for hosting fewer relatives than the previous tenants. I pinned it to the fridge. Always. By the end of the month, I'd blocked Ben's number, set my email filter to redirect anything from my parents to a folder I labeled museum. I checked it once a week. Like a curator, not a son. And that's when it hit me. I'd spent my whole adult life trying to earn a seat at a table that would never set a place for me. So I built my own table. Lakefront. To chairs. And every Sunday morning, I sit out there with a cup of coffee and remind myself, just because they share your name doesn't mean they share your values. I gifted my parents peace. They gifted me clarity. And when I left that day without staying for dinner, it wasn't about anger. It was about finally meeting myself first. They told the neighbors. Ben bought the cabin. Now the neighbors know the truth. So does the whole. And so do ITHE. Story didn't end with the gift. It started with the silence that followed. And it lives in the space I made when I stopped begging to be believed. Some wounds don't come from strangers, but neither does strength. Sometimes you build that from the ground up, one unreturned call, one boundary at a time, until you look around and realize you're not missing anything. You're finally home.